Hello and welcome to our first Facebook Live. We're going to be here today with Bob Mankoff, and he is a cartoonist, the longtime New Yorker cartoon editor, the creator of the New Yorker Caption Contest. He's the president of Cartoon Stock and Cartoon Collections, and he's going to be here today to discuss his lives, his many lives in cartoons. Be sure to like and share this video, and feel free to make comments and ask questions below in the comments, and we'll try to answer as many as we can at the end. So let me bring in Bob Mankoff.
I think you forgot to mention that I'm the president of the Hair Club for Men also. I can swim in this. I can really do anything. Anyway, it's great to be here. I know you're out there as an audience. I wish I could see you. I know it's been a tough time for everybody. It's been a horror show for a lot of people, and that is terrible. And for the rest of us who've gotten through this in a certain way, it's just been like the B-roll of a science film, a bad science film. I was thinking that, yeah, we're going through historic times, but I was really happy when history was something that happened in the past. Anyway, I'm going to tell you in this segment of, I don't know what we're going to call it, the Bobcast or whatever, about my life in the New Yorker cartoons and about New Yorker cartoons. You've got a lot of questions you put in, and I'm going to answer all of them. Not today, though, over time. So anyway, there's no point to stay tuned. We're live and we're moving now. Now, the title of this talk is the title of my book, How About Never Is Never Good For You, My Life in Cartoons. This was a book that came out in 2014. It was an instant bestseller, which meant that it was a bestseller for an instant. Actually, it did pretty well before it was knocked off by one of Malcolm Gladwell's very interesting books, but not funny books. I would like you to go buy it, but I know you're not going to have enough time to do that. So I want to, just for those who are not going to buy it or don't want to or whatever, just a very quick review. So I pretty much, I think, saved you about $19.95. $19.95 about the author. And if you saw that thing, the first part, which it says, I'm not arguing, I'm Jewish, and I am Jewish, and I'm not arguing right now. Hopefully I'm being funny. And I just want to make this very clear. To be funny, you certainly don't have to be Jewish, but if you're Jewish and not funny, that's what we call a shanda. It's a shame. So the other thing is, I love the questions, and we have decided at random, actually, not the questions, anybody who has signed up for this, thanks a lot. And what I'm going to do for you lucky person, I guess, or maybe even unlucky, is here it is. That's the shadow of my GoPro, incidentally. I absolutely need the GoPro for these adventurous things like signing a book. Usually there's people like skateboarding down a mountain. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw for the person that we select at random. I'm going to draw a cartoon for them, maybe something like this. And I do want to say that, hey, I am the cartoon editor, and if by drawing this cartoon, the book that you get becomes more valuable, I'd like it back. Thanks. Okay, so the cartoon that the title of the book is, that's the cartoon. No Thursdays Out. How About Never Is Never Good For You. This is, I've done thousands of cartoons, almost 1,000 for the New Yorker. Is this my best cartoon? I don't know, probably not in my opinion, but in terms of the opinion of people who pay for things, I guess it is. And it is the cartoon that put my darling daughter, Sarah, through Barnard. So I'm very, very grateful for it. Somebody asked a question about humor theory and do I pay attention to it? Well, I've taught psychology of humor. I'll give you like a 5-second course, like why this is funny. First of all, it is a little bit mean, right? So that's a little bit, but just being mean doesn't mean it's funny. What it does is it combines sort of something right and something wrong, or something good and something bad. right? And a little bit of a surprise. So when we look at the language, the syntax, whatever you want to call it, the grammar of it, it's polite, very polite. No Thursdays out. How about never? It's never good for you. And the message is rude. So that kind of thing usually generates a laugh. And in the case of this cartoon, generated money. Now, that cartoon, I am very proud to say, got me in the Yale Book of Quotations. There I am, Robert Mankoff, you as cartoonist, 1944, year I was born, and there it is. And I'm really proud, along with that other very well-known humorist, Mao Zedong. And so we're all going through a hard time. Life itself tends to be a hard time. One of the hardest things about life is you get older. The train only goes in one direction. We all know what the final stop is. So when I became 70, and now I'm 77, my birthday is on May 1st. Thank you in advance for the presents. When I made 70, I had to cope with it. That's a big thing. So here are the 3 jokes I made up about being 70. First one is, I'm 70. The good news is it could be worse. The bad news is it will be. I'm 70. The good news is 70 is the new 50. The bad news is dead is not the new alive. And then finally, when you're 70, and you're a guy, you wake up stiff everywhere but where you want to be. Those are the jokes, folks. Now, the interesting thing about how you earn money as a cartoonist, the New Yorker paid me money for that cartoon. Not enough. And then you make no money at all as people rip you off. And they see, now I have a trademark for this. How about never is never good for you? So I can go after these people who did that T-shirt. But when I didn't have a trademark, they ripped me off. I couldn't get any money. And then, of course, the thong industry jumped all over my cartoon. And all they offered was 3 thongs. And honestly, how many thongs do you need? So I did have a long career at the New Yorker from 1977 all the way to 2017. And so neat thing about the New Yorker is they kept a record of every single cartoon. Now, they don't do this anymore. For a while, it was lovely. They had a scrapbook, and little old ladies would cut the cartoons out and paste them in the scrapbook. And over time, you would build up the scrapbook, and there were just all these volumes of all the New Yorker cartoons, and you were in it, and you could go to the New Yorker library, and you could look at your cartoons and said, here I am. This is Valhalla. This is my resting place. And actually, when you die, they put the other part of that little dash on. But I'm not dead yet. Okay, so in my time at the New Yorker, I did some cartoons other than the Thursdays Out. Here's a few of them. And I think you'll get my humor, my cast of mind, and the kinds of things I find funny, both as a creator and both as an editor and both as an enjoyer and a consumer of humor. I'm sorry, dear, I wasn't listening. Could you repeat what you said since we've been married? On the one hand, eliminating the middleman would result in lower costs, increased sales, and greater consumer satisfaction. On the other hand, we're the middleman. I realized I was looking at another screen, and maybe it wasn't as funny because of that. But now I'm looking directly at you. And so now all the humor will be potentiated. As a matter of fact, you did catch us at a bad time. And while there's no reason yet to panic, I think it only prudent that we make preparations to panic. 1 billion is 1,000 million. Why wasn't I informed of this? Now, when I do cartoons, for the most part, sometimes I do really silly cartoons, but usually I have an idea and a meaning and something I want to convey, and usually a kind of criticism, sometimes of myself or my thinking, and sometimes of others. I will say for the most part, my humor and the New Yorker humor, certainly when I was there, is not punching up, not punching down, but elbowing to the side, making fun of the class or the group that you are a member of. I personally think that's the deepest kind of humor, the humor in which you make fun of the other. Yeah, it's fun, but it's not very revealing. And remember, to someone else, you're the other. Uh, this is a cartoon that I did in 1980, one of my most reprinted cartoons. It's probably not really funny in any way, but I think it means a lot, and it means a lot to me. And I got a lot of great response from this from philosophers, sociology teachers, all sorts of highbrows who put it in their textbook because it's sort of really an explanation in some way, or it's certainly my view of how the world works. Uh, now that's product placement. People ask you how you get ideas. Well, for a long time, where I was at the New Yorker, when it was 25 West 43rd Street, we looked right out at the Empire State Building, and the idea came to me. And I actually thought, well, this would actually be a great ad. And then, of course, I will just do a dumb joke that's funny. And this is Hamlet's duplex. To be or not to be. I remember when I showed that at the meeting with David Remnick. Remnick said, "That's dumb." I said, "But David, that's funny." And then he said, "That's dumb." And then I said, "But that's funny." And he said, "It's funny." And often meetings would go like that. Okay, people ask me, how do I come up with ideas for my cartoons? And I say, I think of them. And it's interesting. To get this idea, you actually have to know just a little bit about the history of art, of sculpture. That Auguste Rodin is the guy who did this, that did The Thinker, and also did The Kiss. Okay, but what made me think that I could even be a cartoonist? Well, grew up in Queens. There were specialized schools in New York City, Brooklyn Tech, Bronx High School of Science, and the High School of Music and Art, which is not called that anymore. Now it's called LaGuardia High School, because they thought that would be a catchier name. Anyway, I went for art. You could go for either music and art. And this is the school that was really maybe made famous the way they combined it with the performing arts in the movie fame. Anyway, I went for art, and here I am in my graduation picture, Robert Mankoff, 1962. But look at that dude next to me. Look at Edward Barak. He's got a pipe. It's 1962, and he's 18 years old, and he's got a pipe. So when I was researching my book, because I came across this in the album, the Music and Art album, I said, I wonder what happened to Edward Barak. And through the majesty of the internet, I could find out. The Art of Edward F. Barak, Dean of American Pipe Designers. Is that amazing? Is that ridiculous? Is that funny? I know you think it's funny, and there's no theory of humor that'll actually tell you why that's funny. But it is funny. And I thought, man, I missed my calling. I missed my calling. Edward F. Barak edged me out. Think what I could have accomplished if I could have been the dean of American Pipe Designers. But no. What did I do? Well, that's me in 1962 in one of those great pictures from high school albums from that year. Everything is whited out and everything. It looks like they gave me a nose job. That's nice. Okay, so then there I am, 1962. I go to Syracuse University where I major in hair. And look at that, that's me in 1966. And it's in the middle of the 60s, and people ask me when they see this picture, I think when I give talks in person, you're probably thinking the same. did he do drugs? And, when I'm asked that question, I said, I did, but really not enough. If I had a time machine, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong screen. The next, I promise you, the next one I will be looking at the right screen all the time. If I had a time machine, I'd go back and I'd do a little bit more drugs. It's too late for me now. Okay, so after that, I went to graduate school in experimental psychology, where I almost got a PhD. I was on the cusp of my PhD, but it was the world's longest cusp. It went on forever and ever and ever. So I quit. I quit on the cusp. I do plan to go back and get it posthumously. So I quit to become a cartoonist. I'd always wanted to be a cartoonist. And here in 1974, at the age of 30, I said, well, that's it. I'm going to give it a shot. I told my parents this. I'm laughing and you're laughing too. My Jewish parents said, okay, Mom, Dad, I'm not going to be a psychologist. They would love anything that had ologist at the end of it. I'm going to be a cartoonist. And my father looked at me very sternly and said, they already have people who do that. Couldn't argue with that. I said, yeah, but one of them might die. So I just told them I just watched the obituaries very carefully. So I started cartooning, and this is the first cartoon I ever had in any magazine, the Saturday Review of Literature. And here's the caption: faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, no shorthand. Does shorthand even exist anymore? And look at that style. That style had nothing to do at all with the style I later developed, which you can see, which is pointillism, dots, 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 which you can see very clearly in another cartoon that I sold to them, which is, frankly, this is probably from 74, 75. Please tell the king I've remembered the punchline. And I think that's a pretty great cartoon. And a pain in the ass to do. There are thousands of dots in that cartoon that I did with a rapidograph pen. At one point I actually, try to do this, I attached it to an electric toothbrush, but that never worked out. Anyway, that's when I developed that style. I've really done these kinds of drawings going back to the high school of music and art, but it was a very, very difficult style. But it served me well in a way when I finally got into the New Yorker, because it certainly grabs your attention. It's basically, if the guy's doing this much work to do a cartoon, it might actually be funny, or else why waste all that time? Anyway, so then I had some success at Saturday Review and other magazines, and then I kept trying to get into the New Yorker, and I kept getting rejected from the New Yorker, rejected. I don't know what the number is. Sometimes I say 2,000, sometimes I say 500. It was a lot. It was a couple of years of doing it. It was definitely more than 6. I definitely submitted more than 6 cartoons. I submitted probably well over 1,000. And all I got back was the normal New Yorker rejection. But eventually, after years and years, in 1977, this rejection changed to this. Okay, I'm not going to read it. And of course, they didn't send me that. And if you're offended by that word, just lie down for a while. You'll see you'll get over it. But that was the emotion. And part of the emotion was, after submitting all these cartoons, oh, well, I made it now. I can quit. I can go now work for my dad's carpet store. This is interesting because this is the contract. Now, 3 years later, after actually getting a lot of cartoons published in the New Yorker, I got a contract. And I'm blurring out all the parts because at that time they used to actually, as perks, give you drugs. Not true. Not true. I don't know. I don't know who's in the audience. I figure you're all intelligent, but there might be somebody who's not. And we take that literally. December 15th, 1980, I get a contract for the New Yorker. What did that mean? Bales of money? No. What it meant was that they pay you a higher price. There would be some bonus system, but there was no guarantee that they would buy anything. So every week you you never knew. You never knew whether they would buy a cartoon or whether your cartoon would appear in the New Yorker. Well, from 1980, when I got a contract in 1997, I became cartoon editor, and then that was a whole different world, and that world was somewhat captured in a 60 Minutes that was in 2014. I'll play the video, and you get some idea about that.
Hey, how are you? Paul, Robert. Well, I suppose you came in here to show me cartoons.
Every Wednesday, a nervous band of ink-stained wretches gathers at Bob Mankoff's office.
So let's see what you got here.
All right.
Hoping against hope to sell him a cartoon. As for what they're paid, no one's talking.
How many have been accepted? I really don't know.
There's the grizzled veteran Sam Gross, who figures he's submitted 30,000 cartoons, give or take. 30,000?
Yeah.
Many consider this his masterpiece. A dog at Heaven's Gate asking, is there any chance of getting my testicles back?
I still have to push the envelope. Sam has always pushed the envelope, things that you couldn't quite do. How you doing?
Very well.
There's always a little preliminary chit-chat.
How you been?
All right.
Farley.
Farley Katz specializes in the far out, in both cartoons and facial hair.
So what's going on with that mustache? Are you still entering the contest?
No, I retired from the circuit. This is all like a recreational mustache.
Okay.
And then Mankoff speed reads the rough sketches.
This is just too awkward to draw in.
Most get rejected. He's seen the idea in one form or another before.
Whenever they open your bag at an airport.
Carolina Johnson has an airport security cartoon with the TSA guy saying, you can pack this back up now.
Yeah.
Emily Flake has a joke featuring both King Kong and Godzilla.
The two heavy hitters in the monster world.
It's as simple as that.
Maybe it's just a day for facial hair, but Joe Dana seems to be a contender with a Tarzan cartoon.
The apes are saying, we found you and raised you as one of us. So we were just wondering, at what point did you learn to shave?
Can I say, I have researched this. There's no iteration of Tarzan in literature, comic books, or movies in which he has facial hair. It makes no sense.
Right.
Here's some of the stuff around.
This is just stage one, thinning out the candidates to take to the magazine's editor.
This is a little bit too straightforward.
He's largely non-committal, pleasant but blunt,
It won't look right in our magazine.
when a drawing simply isn't good enough.
We're not that impressed. Okay, next. It doesn't have enough charm.
Wow, they're pleasant but blunt. I don't know if everyone actually felt that, but and that was interesting. There's two things wrong in there. Sam Gross has done 30,000 cartoons. He didn't submit 30,000 cartoons to the New Yorker. Of course, the great Sam Gross, still going strong at 90, or maybe not quite as strong, but still as funny as ever at 90. Has done cartoons since the 1950s. Also, the interesting thing about that thing, Morley Safer saw that cartoon that then it was so funny he could never get the line right, and they had to paste it together. Now, the actual job of the cartoon editor was, I met with people every week, and anybody really could come in and meet with me at least once. So the door was open in that way. But basically what I did was look at thousands of cartoons, and here I am looking at thousands of them, and that is actually not that great a job because it's really easy to lose your sense of humor. Any of you who have voted on the caption contest over and over again know how numbing that could be, but still you have to have some other perspective. That's a tough, dirty job, and someone's got to do it, and I did it. And it's a good gig. So I'm not really complaining, but I'm trying to give you a little bit of insight of what it's like, because people would always say, you must be laughing all the time. And you're not really, because you wouldn't even have time. If you kept laughing and had to look at 1,000 cartoons, you'd never get done. But this is an interesting drawing by William Hogarth, The Laughing Audience, 1733. Everyone's having a good time here, really good time, except this guy, right? He's the critic. He's evaluating it. And that is a little bit what it's like to be anybody who is evaluating humor for commerce, you're really not laughing. You're thinking, does this work for the magazine? Does it work for our audience? All of that. So generally, you can be a little bit of a sourpuss. And when I was doing this job, I had to make sure that didn't really happen to me. I had to really guard against the fact of just looking at lots and lots of cartoons and often realizing that you don't think it's funny because you've looked at 500 cartoons. It's like, hey, I'm eating bonbons and the 1,000th one doesn't taste as good. So you had to factor that in. So here are some of the rules I had in my own mind. Where else would those rules be? If I had to write, there are only 6 rules. If I had them written down and couldn't remember it wouldn't speak well of my memory. So rule 1, if you're being funny for money, originality is overrated. Which means people like sort of what they've seen before in some sense. That's why you have all these cliches. They like something new within a cocoon of the familiar. That's just the formula. That's why jokes have certain formulas. That's why you're watching the movies that you've watched before, listening to the music you've liked before. So this is the very first Desert Island cartoon that ever appeared in a magazine. I claim this island. Let me look at the right monitor. I claim this island for the USA and the Alfred R. Whipple Real Estate Company of Muscatine, Iowa. Okay, and by 1951, 20 years later, there's a different theme here, and it's about the freedom of the desert island to be freed from the constricts, especially involving sexuality, of society. So there it says, gosh, Mr. Maxwell, with all those other girls on the boat, I never thought you'd give me a tumble. Now, this cartoon, 1951, we'd never publish a cartoon like this. It's too sexist. It's too whatever it is. And it's just basically too 1951. Look at the cartoon from 1997 by Robert Weber. What's our immigration policy? Now you see the desert island being used, this trope, this cliche used to speak about other issues that are just as relevant today. So very quickly, one of these cliches becomes meta, which becomes about itself. I did this cartoon in 1980. So it has a guy on the island's disappeared, right? The very beginning, the island has to been up to, at least in a fanciful way, support life. By 1980, it's a tiny island, and the cartoon is, no man is an island, but I come pretty damn close. And it's the New Yorker, right? So we're playing up to people's idea that they know who John Donne is, that they may have heard this poem. No man is an island entire of itself. Each is a part of the continent, a piece of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less. Honestly, really? Europe? A clod was washed away by the sea? Get over it. It's just a clod. But anyway, we play up to the fact that most people have read the New Yorker, have been to college. Rule 2, it's been done. And it's been done means it's very likely to have been done. We would look, when we accepted cartoons, we'd evaluate them against all the cartoons that we had done before, not all the cartoons in the history of the world. That would be impossible, but we didn't want to print things that had been done. And so I did this cartoon, Let Me Through, I'm the Victim, which actually is a really good cartoon because that's the world we're in now. Everybody's the victim, except maybe the victim. And so David Cypress, great cartoonist, submitted me, when I was cartoon editor, the exact same cartoon. He didn't plagiarize it. He came up with the idea independently. So that's just something else that's really interesting. Also reflected in the caption contest, which I'll talk about in the next time we do this together. People come up with similar ideas. Here are similar cartoons submitted exactly the same week on Waldo. We picked the second one because it was marginally more subtle. Rule 3, play favorites as in favorite cartoonists. This goes back to the thing that people like what they've liked. So you not only like this particular cartoon by Roz Fast or me, or someone you've seen before, you like them, just like you like your favorite comedians, just like you like to hear the singers sing what they've sung before. So just from a psychological aspect, you're going to think something is funnier, whether it actually is in a completely objective way is not the case, than when you're familiar with not only the person and the cartoonist, but their style and their outlook. So here's 3 cartoons by 3 different people about insomnia. Insomnia Jeopardy. This is from Roz, and it's very Chastian, right? Wonderful thing at the end, keeping her up, right? Ideas for a screenplay. So everything else is bad, and that's good. This is Drew Dernovich, one of the great cartoonists, really, that I brought into the magazine. Fantastic artist, and just wonderful, and really in every way as a cartoonist. And here's his cartoon. When I can't sleep, I find that it sometimes helps to get up and jot down my anxieties. Okay. I missed the slide. I think it was mine. Okay. Rule 4. Okay. Play favorites, but not so much that nobody else gets to play. So during my tenure at the magazine, I brought in all these cartoonists who hadn't been there before. And that continues to go on. There's a little bit difference, I think, and we can get to that in the question about what it used to take to get into a cartoon in a magazine when I was a cartoonist, then when I became cartoon editor, and now. But it is important to bring new people into the magazine and have more diversity in the magazine. And certainly that happened. I'm very proud of what I did there. Now, people often ask, how do cartoonists get ideas for cartoons? Here's this video of Liam Walsh, one of the young cartoonists that came in when I was cartoon editor, explaining all that. Listen to him and learn.
I'm going to explain a cartoon that was popular, made the rounds of Facebook, and seems to have struck a chord with people, which was this one of a guy wearing the dog cone around his neck and saying, I was looking back at some of my old notebooks, and the way it seems to have started was I was in an airport at one point and wrote down an idea for meditation with a shock collar. So I think that was the first time that I had the idea of crossing some sort of pet training device with humans and with attention, I guess. Up to the shock collar idea sort of worked its way through my brain for a while, and I started playing around with the idea of the RCA Victor dog who sits next to the gramophone, and I was using the cone of the gramophone as a cone around his neck. The only thing I came up with is he's saying to another Dalmatian, "Don't ask." So probably better that you don't either. The next page is a dog wearing a lampshade around his neck, and the other dog is saying, "Oh, Neville, you crazy party animal." It was a trope in Garfield when I was growing up that a party animal always wears the lampshade on his head. Then that was all. Nothing else. And then the rest of this book, nothing else came of that until a few weeks later, it just pops up out of nowhere. I guess I've been thinking about dogs because I have a guy using a remote to turn a dog on and off or to make a dog sit, and it says Dogmatic. And then out of that, just suddenly I have it. It's supposed to keep me from compulsively checking my phone. And unfortunately, I was playing around with the idea, seeing where I could go with it. And unfortunately, it also says licking my scab and licking my butthole. So you can edit that out. There it is. He's at a party. He has the cone around his neck. He's talking to a woman. That was basically the idea. And it looks like it just appeared out of nowhere, but I think that it was all sort of sifting through my brain. So out of each notebook, sometimes I'll have 3 or 4 cartoons out of each notebook, and sometimes there'll be notebooks that are just vast, barren deserts of terrible ideas that may someday become better ideas.
Actually, that's, I think, wonderfully insightful of Liam, and absolutely true. You need the vast, barren desert to get the great ideas. In other words, you need bad ideas. You need to go through them to get good ideas. The difference between an amateur and a professional is an amateur thinks all their ideas are good. Okay, so rule 5 is new news is good news. That means that people like topical cartoons and that they don't even have to be that funny, or humor or jokes in general. They don't have to be funny as long as they come very quickly contingent upon the event. So here you saw they had this idiotic thing the scientific 7-minute workout. Yeah, all the scientists who did this are now in hospitals. When I looked at this, I thought, yeah, this really should be labeled "How to Hurt Yourself Fast." I mean, this is something that you would. I don't know. I don't think there. I think if you force people to do this and they didn't want to, you would be violating the Geneva Convention. Okay, so Roz, when this came out, did this cartoon, the 7-second workout. It's a very simple cartoon. Roz is a genius cartoonist, but this is an ordinary cartoon for her, certainly. You know what I mean? But it comes out at that moment, and you link it to that. You love Roz, and it's funny. Rule 6, location. Location. Depends on the audience, depends where it appears, whether something's funny or going to work. There's all kinds of jokes and humor. There's secret humor, the stuff that goes on in your head. You can think anything you want, and it can be terrible, and, that's life, okay? Then there's private humor, just something that you say to your friend, and you're not going to share with anybody else. Of course, that no longer exists because you don't know who's your friend, and everybody shares everything, so you better just keep that private thing, that joke that is incredibly funny but also offensive, you better lock that in your head. You also should have stuffed your ears full of cotton so somehow you don't tilt your head to the side and that joke come out and someone cancel you for it. Okay. I think I ranted a little bit too much on that. Please forgive me. But okay, the New Yorker is a really serious magazine. It's very empathetic. It cares about everything and everybody in the world and the planet. Caring that much and being funny is a little bit incongruous. It's hard. To be funny, you have to abstract yourself. You have to move away from caring a little bit. Henri Bergson said humor demanded a temporary anesthesia of the heart. You just can't care about everything or you won't laugh at anything. I mean, here's a good example. This cartoon actually appeared in the New Yorker in 1998, and it would never appear now. It would never, and it's a great cartoon. Jack Ziegler, the late great Jack Ziegler, New Yorker magazine, 5/25/98. So, yep, it's a gallows with a ramp for the handicapped. It's not making fun of handicapped people. It's confronting the ambiguity and the feelings that we have as human beings and the conflict that we have about what we want to do in a society that we think is both just and practical and makes sense. And maybe even the ambiguity that we might feel resentment, actually feel resentment against someone who's handicapped, who's inconvenienced. We could say that's the wrong thing to feel. It might well be. But to deny completely that people feel it is ridiculous. Now that cartoon, 1998, hey, David Remnick selected that. Would he select it now? Absolutely not. Would I select it now? I still think it's just as funny as it was. But I don't have the same worries that I would have had then as cartoon editor or Remnick would have had. But here's a version of the cartoon that's the exact same idea that is completely offensive, even though it's the same idea. I modified this. I actually asked Jack, okay, let's make it offensive. This was not published. But it shows you just how tricky it is, right? How to make something that might offend people less offensive. One way is simply by the kind of drawing. This was asked. It's a fanciful drawing. The more realistic this drawing is, the more macabre it would be. Here, it's just funny because of first of all, Jack Ziegler's fantastic artistry as a cartoonist, drawing just what you need to have and no more. But people can be really sensitive. That you might have objections to. What about this cartoon? Yeah, we all get old and we lose a little height. Look at the response we got for this. Another joke on old white males, haha, the wit. It's nice to be young and rude, but someday you'll be old unless you drop dead as with. Cordially, Robert Byron. And the guy who wrote this real name is not Robert Byron. I just want to say that. But man, you can't get more cordial than old Bob Byron. Actually, he's being funny because he's really being ironic. he's not being cordial, and that's sort of one of the ways we're funny. We say one thing that means another. Sometimes it's sarcasm when it's verbal and very blunt, and when it's irony, it's a little bit more sophisticated. Sometimes a lot more sophisticated. Let's look at this cartoon, discouraging data on the antidepressant. Okay, it's not, okay, the object here is not people who commit suicide, but drug companies. And people have very varied response to this. As a psychologist or someone still hoping to get that get off the cusp of that PhD, I did some online experiments. So here, most people thought this was funny. Some people, they could rate it from 1 to 10. I like animals. I don't want to hurt them. That doesn't seem very funny to them. Some people really like it. The person over here said, I don't like to see animals suffer, even in cartoons. I called this person up and I said, they don't suffer. They can't suffer. It's a cartoon. And then they weren't reassured, so I told them that we use anesthetic ink. So humor can have an edge to it, a little bit of danger, and maybe that's what we call edgy, and it conceivably can make people feel uncomfortable or even excite them. I mean, when you look at zoos, old-fashioned zoos, what's a zoo about, really? Yeah, the tiger is beautiful, but it's dangerous, and it could kill you, and that's why we have the bars. So humor enables us to get excited and maybe misbehave a little, but be protected by the bars of the fact that it is a joke, which is less and less likely to as a defense these days. So that's a zoo. It is exciting. You go up to the tiger, it can't kill you because of the bars. And you could have a completely safe zoo. Okay, just let's remove the tiger. No tiger, and just imagine the tiger. No chance at all. So that'd be a pretty bad zoo. On the other hand, this would be... On the other hand, this would be a worse zoo. So the New Yorker audience is very sensitive, probably much less sensitive to people who are handicapped or disabled in any way than people who are gluten-free. We did this cartoon in which a woman is saying, I've only been gluten-free for a week, but I'm already really annoying. Here's the message we got. Okay, it's not about people who have celiac disease. It's about people who have celiac disease envy. You couldn't have like rows and aisles of gluten-free stuff if there just aren't that many people with celiac disease. And don't get me wrong, or do get me right. I'm okay with people gluten-free. My daughter's gluten-free. Her boyfriend's gluten-free. Our dogs are gluten-free. Oh, what's happening? What is happening? Hey, Jessica, I don't know, it crashed.
Hey there. So I think that probably your screen just went down.
Okay, so what should I do now?
You can try to share your screen again if you want to get back into the presentation, or if you go with the presentation, that's cool too.
Let me see if I can get back into it. Damn it. Let me see. So my screen went down. I think we should just go to the questions.
Okay, that sounds good. All right.
Let's go to the questions. I don't know, how do we do that? Can we just do that now? Saying, I'm sorry, my screen, I thought it was okay. It was only a few more things. Okay.
They'll just have to come back next time to hear the rest of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. We've got some questions here. The first one is, for a cartoonist, what usually comes first, the cartoon or the caption?
Well, it's different kinds of cartoonists. There are two kinds of cartoonists, I think, basically, and there's ones in the middle. And there are people who are doodlers, and there are people who are writers. My great friend Jack Thiele was more of a doodler. It was almost like he was. Guys, now you're pissing me off. What the hell is that phone?
The real behind the scenes look at what it's like.
God. I thought they outlawed landlines. So Jack was more a doodler. It was almost like he was creating his own caption contest. Matt Diffee is more of a writer, in that he writes it. And there's all stuff in between, in which you have sort of an idea for a cartoon, a line, and then it becomes another line, and then you start, and you're usually at a drawing board, so you're doodling. So it sort of goes sort of back and forth in that way. I might well, a lot of it comes in a combined process, but you do have the really the different poles between Matt is a writer who's a fantastic artist, yeah. and Jack was always, his cartoons were wackier because they were being generated by the drawing, not by the writers. Tend not to generate wacky drawings. It's someone, for example, like Bruce Eric Kaplan, who is a comedy writer. There's nothing really weird in the drawing usually. It could be a boss saying, I like things done my particular way by someone else. Okay, and he's got a fantastic style. It's dark and nihilistic, but he thought of the line. He didn't draw the boss first. And for me, it went back and forth. And of course, there are visual artists like Seth Fleischman, who I brought into the New Yorker, who don't even have a caption. So it's a combination that way. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is, has cancel culture changed your sense of what's funny and what's acceptable?
It hasn't changed my sense of what's funny. It certainly changed my sense of what's acceptable. Because acceptable means what are going to be the consequences of making the joke in terms of affecting your job or affecting your life if a social mob comes after you for a joke they don't like. And so I think, for instance, Jack's cartoon is absolutely funny. If people ask me, one of the things, what do I think was the funny cartoons that we didn't publish in the New Yorker? Certainly after 9/11, there were really funny cartoons that are still funny. That Sam Gross did a fantastic cartoon in which there's a suicide bomber that's all blown up in heaven, and the figure, I won't mention who the figure is, saying, "You get the virgins when we find your penis." That's funny. And if you don't think that's funny, then you don't know what funny is. And anyway, so okay, next question.
Sure. It'd be fun to hear you talk about how to write humor in cartoons in 2021 versus writing for, say, 2090 reader. I mean, excuse me, the 1990 reader. How is it different?
Yeah. Well, I think the cancel culture, the culture becomes very, very, very much about it. And in 1990, I think one of the things is that, okay, you have to worry really about topics you're not allowed to talk about anymore. If this would be the New Yorker, that's absolutely the case. So where in the 90s, it would be much more freewheeling about who you could criticize and who you couldn't, or who you'd make fun of. So certainly for the New Yorker, when Donald Trump was elected, there could be lots, or even prior to be elected, there were lots of cartoons making fun of him, none making fun of Hillary Clinton. You know what I mean? So yeah. That was just, that's the situation. If I look back a bigger span of time, what I'd see is that the cartoons from the 40s and 50s, people within the cartoons don't make the jokes. Mm-hmm. So in that gluten-free cartoon, Trevor Spalding is making the woman is making the joke.
Right.
In fact, she's saying she's annoying. Okay. Which is very much, so you look at a cartoon from 1947, there's a woman at a baseball game, she's looking at her watch, and she's saying, why didn't they tell us there's going to be an extra inning? she's not making a joke. That could be a joke that you would make, but she's not making it. They're making fun of women a little bit in sports and and whatever. So that humor constantly changes. And there's just one part of it is this offensive part. The other part is how humor now needs people are more interested in liking humor that's more that they relate to. They feel this expresses how they feel. And I'm not saying there's anything bad about that. A cartoonist like Leanna Fink is like that. A progenitor of hers is Roz. We're looking into, we know something. Jack, who's fantastic, Jack Ziegler, your dad, fantastic. You knew nothing about Jack from his cartoons. You thought Jack was wacky. Jack was not wacky. You thought he was high on drugs. He was not high on drugs. He was, that. You know a lot about Roz from her cartoons. A lot. And so that's how humor has changed in a way. And that pretty much is a male-female difference, but not entirely. But for instance, you know a lot about David Cypress from his cartoons. You know a lot about William Hafley from his cartoons. There are all sorts of people that you know something about from the cartoons. And overall, you do have a sense of maybe something about me. But it's, for me, what you said with sense about me is more abstract about what I think. From Roz, from Leanna, and Leanna Fink is further along the continuum from Roz. This is how she's feeling. There's not a persona here, how she's feeling. Yeah. This is how she's feeling. So that's something I think really interesting.
Okay. All right. So since you retired from being the cartoon editor at the New Yorker, do you feel the selection standards have been lowered?
They've changed. It's much harder. It's much easier to get into the cartoon. They've changed because there's another criterion that is needed, which is diversity. And that has been, at least initially, at the expense of quality. That's my opinion. That's a lot of other people you could say. And it may well be a choice that you make. You may say that, well, in order to immediately have diversity, we have to make this sacrifice, quality, which no one's going to say they're sacrificing the quality, of course, but that's my opinion, because the people who are contributing are often not professional cartoonists who have never cartooned before. So going back to your dad, Jack said he didn't think he got it right till he had done 3,000. Okay. In other words, there was a craft. It takes a long time. The very first cartoons you'll do, they're okay. You're just imitating somebody else. You're whatever. So we're in that situation now where we wanted more diversity, which basically meant more women, and many women came in. Emily Flake, Leanna, Carolita, also came in when I was a cartoonist. But the idea that you needed a 50-50 representation, and for that, I think that the standard has, and I will say this: it's clearly that the standard has, in my position, from my opinion, in that it's people who have never had a cartoon published anywhere before have gotten cartoons published. Well, I would say that's a pretty much of an objective test about whether standards have changed. So anyway, that's my opinion, and that's what you'll get from me here. Just my honest opinion about things.
Sure.
Because you see, here's the thing. About you can't get fired twice.
Right.
I don't have to worry about that. Next question.
How do you jumpstart your ideas and know when you have a terrific one?
You never know when you have a terrific idea. That's the difference between an amateur and a professional. You have an idea. When you have an idea, you're in a completely biased state, because you've gone from the state you're usually in, which is, I have no idea. Oh shit, how am I going to get ideas? This is terrible. I don't have any ideas. Oh man, what am I going to do? Whoa, I got an idea. This is so great. So you're biased. You just went from not having an idea and feeling like you shouldn't be a cartoonist. You have no business in this business, to feeling, okay, I can still do it. And so you over-evaluate that idea. Or you might under-evaluate. Usually you see that the idea is good sometime later. in which your opinion can change. You can go from thinking that great idea wasn't that great, or that lousy idea actually is good. But I will say, in terms of jump starting it, I need to be annoyed, and you can tell I'm often annoyed. Okay, so in other words, you got to care about you got to care about something. You got to think about something. What is bothering you? And it could be, it could be just the language, just the things you hear, just the hype or whatever, and. So that's what I would be thinking about today. What is bothering me, what is annoying, and then try to make that funny and interesting and someone asked and memorable. If you can do all of that, you've got a good cartoon. Often you just have to settle for one of the things, and then what Liam said was interesting, because it's not simply so you can do a cartoon that's okay that can later become a great cartoon. So I would say, if anyone wants to do this, nurture any idea that you have, any little idea you had. So as I was falling asleep the other day, because I think I told you, Jessica, I want to get rid of my shrink. That's it. This has been too long a relationship. I've been with him longer than I've been with wives. So this is ridiculous. And so I started thinking about how I was going to break it to him. And I thought I might break it to him in a cartoon, where I had a thought. I said, well, look, eventually the therapy has to come to an end. Either I'll die or you will. So we know there's an end point here. And then I thought of the Grim Reaper coming into the classic scenario of the guy on the couch, and the shrink saying, he's not done yet. So at first, this came out of my experience of being annoyed, of like saying, hey, it's marginal now. How long can you keep whatever I got out of this, So I'm just saying that's sort of the energy that I want to generate, what I feel will be, real feelings, at something that someone else will respond to. The next question.
Yes. So other than firing your psychiatrist, what have you been daydreaming about?
Daydreaming is so important. Daydreaming is, I've called cartooning is dreaming while awake. And the way we get ideas is not to look at constant stimuli, but to look at them and then daydream. So I do this I all the time. I mean, so I'll just not look at YouTube, and close my eyes and just sit and and get bored and think. And then an idea will pop in. So I thought, and then Bitcoin pops in my mind. Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin. Man, they're using so much energy. That's great. No, it's bad. That's bad that they're using all that. It's terrible. Oh, Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to save the world. They're going to use all this energy, and then they're going to realize they need new energy, lots of energy, and they will invent nuclear fusion, because the politics. So my mind just starts to ramble by dreaming, by letting it think, by not being restricted. And so daydreaming, so I think about that, then it'll go to consciousness, then it'll go free will and determinism, and it'll just go. And I think we're in a state where we're so this that we're not daydreaming. We're so this, we're looking at the next thing, we're letting something else dream for us. It dream for us, and you're not going to get good ideas that way. You're just going to be addicted, and believe me, I know this. I just had this discussion. So daydreaming really important.
Very good, very good. So how would you coach someone to be creative? Do you think it's a natural tendency, or is it a gift?
Okay, everything has to do with talent. If you don't have talent, it doesn't mean you can't get better. But if you played any sport, no matter how much you practice, sorry, Malcolm Gladwell, it's not going to work. You're gonna plateau. That doesn't mean you shouldn't play the sport. It just means be realistic. It's like I think a great example is math. Everybody knows you can get better at math. Everybody knows there's a point where that's it for you.
Yeah.
I'm out. I don't know, and that's true of humor. So you can improve each thing. You can become. I don't know what your depending on your basic talent, you become funnier. Everybody who makes a living at it learns to do it. But if they don't have it, and I don't know if that habit is when you pop out, or it's something that happens very early and you start learning very early. And that goes back to sports again. You can't pick up skiing at 15, okay? And maybe the people who are really good at it, you know, it's very early that they learn these things and can do them. And maybe that's the same thing with humor. It could be family, but so it might not be genetic, but it might be something that happens early and something that you keep working on constantly. I think that's how it was with me, in that at a certain point, I'm pretty young and I'm joking, you know, and constantly doing that and constantly getting better at it or understanding it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to look, the next one I just want to say is going to be on the caption contest and how to win it. Right now, absolutely, no, you're not. I'm just hyping it, but still, I'm going to tell you all interesting things about it that nobody else knows and that will help you. And meanwhile, I want you to go to cartoonstock.com, our company, to look at great cartoons. And that's what I screwed up on the slides as it all disappeared. So I don't know, do we still have more time or are we done?
I've got one more question. One more question. So what criteria does a cartoonist use to figure out if they might be crossing the line of some sort?
I think you should cross the line. That's how you know where the line is. That's where you know. And the line is different. I think we're in a terrible state in the world where being offended is the worst thing that can happen to somebody. And when people said, I'll leave everyone with this. When people say that I was offended by their cartoon in my public talks, and I'll say it to you out there, put the phone back on the hook and hear the beeping. All right, I'm sorry about that. We're going to go. That's a good point. I wish I could read all of that. When people said they were offended, it's funny, I can't hear the beeping because I've lost hearing in that range. One of the advantages of being old. I say, okay, you were offended, and then what happened? Were you able to have lunch? Nightmares? Turns out you were okay. So look, everybody, this has really been a pleasure for me. I'm sorry for goofing it up this time around a little bit. The next time around, I'll goof it up in different ways, but I definitely won't goof it up in the ways I have goofed it up. And Jessica, I really want to thank you for helping us through it. Jessica Ziegler, who's with Cartoon Stock and Cartoon Collection. So do we do like some sign off where there's fireworks or what?
No, you can just say, goodbye. And, we're planning on doing this probably again in 2 weeks. Same time, same place.
Yeah, 2 weeks, the same time, people.
Yep. And we'll talk about the caption contest, and you can talk about how you developed that, because you were the one who came up with that originally. And yeah. And that's it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody. I hope people actually were able to see this.
They were, I promise.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.